Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, Tyler Shuck, Dennis the Menace, Zach Kitley, and RESPECK. Next on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider! Everything runs through Lubbock.
Great to see you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks once again for making us your first listen every day on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. He's the only Chris Level. I'm Casey Cowan. And Chris, kicking off today's episode, wrapping up the week overall with something different from what we've discussed so far this week. We're going to start in Joey McGuire's world today. We're not far away from opening day, now under 110 days, which we know is the benchmark that we all look forward to. If we can just get under that 110 mark, we're on the downhill slope. And we're going to spend a lot of time, justifiably so, we already have to a great degree through spring camp, talking about the guys under Tim DeRuyter. The defensive side of the football, Chris, is one of the many reasons why we're excited about this season upcoming. Some of the returners you got in the mix, among other exciting impact players, newcomers, guys like CJ Baskerville. You're going to get familiar with plenty of those guys. But wrapping up this week, you and I were considering the question of whether or not the offense has gotten enough credit, because what we saw a season ago clearly packed with adversity on that side of the football under Zach Kitley, whether it was the health of the quarterbacks or trying to get better as the season went along up front along that offensive line. A lot of twists and turns on that side of the ball, but at the end of it, they were a big part of why you were successful as a team. And we asked the question as to whether or not they're getting enough credit, Chris. And I also think that you could kind of consider that even in a different way, because they may have on that side of the ball the singular most identifiable player on the roster, that being Tyler Shuck, near and far, local or national media. So a lot to consider there, and certainly want to give them their just due this offseason as we get ready for the next one.
Yeah, the answer is just, in my opinion, it's no. They have not gotten enough credit, and I don't know if they got enough credit as it was happening last year. I think we, as folks that have covered Texas Tech for a long time, and fans of the same way, there's a level that the bar is high when it comes to offense. We are, I don't know if the right word is spoiled, but we're used to seeing a certain level of output. And, I think we would both agree that the game has changed over the last 5 to 7 years. Defenses have adjusted. The rules are a bit different. The rules are even going to be a bit different this next year with the clock stopping. You can't, in other words, you can't run as many plays and all those things. But, I think it's fascinating that the bar has been, I guess, so low around here as it relates to defense. But that's where you feel like a lot of the focus has been, and understandably so, because the defensive turnaround here in Lubbock with Texas Tech has been really fun to watch. It's not that you're the 85 Bears, but you play competitive defense, you turn the ball over or get the takeaways, you pressure the quarterback now and all those things. But yeah, going back to last year, Cowan, man, I think your offense, and that's because what made me want to ask this aloud is how much credit the Texas offense is getting nationally right now. Quinn Ewers, top 5 quarterback in the country on some list. Texas ranked really high, picked to win the Big 12. And it all points to offense and their offense on paper, and their tight end is supposedly phenomenal. Xavier Worthy, obviously Quinn Ewers, and all these things. Well, you go back and look, I mean, yes or no, all of Tech's offense comes back.
Almost.
It's essentially yes. You lose Weston. Let's see. Let me think.
Thompson. SaRodorick Thompson's the one I first thought of.
SaRodorick Thompson. You lose Weston Wright. Trey Cleveland transferred out, and you lose Donovan Smith. And then you bring in Cole Spencer, who was already here, but will be playing. You were in Rusty Stotts, Dre McCray, and then Cameron Valdez, and then all your freshmen. So essentially the bulk of it, it's back in nearly its entirety. You're right. Sir Roderick Thompson, a lot of production to try to replace. But I just wonder if the general person that follows this stuff closely realizes you had the 22nd best, scoring offense in the country last year. You were, I think, 27th in the country last year in yards per game and total offense. You were 12th in the country in passing offense. I think you were like 60th when it came to rushing offense. But yeah, you were putting up 462 yards a game and 34 points a game. And the reason why I think that you weren't getting enough credit, Cowan, is because, or you've been given enough credit even now, and I'm looking at it, is that, yeah, you mentioned the quarterback issues, and I say issues, it was injury related, and there, because of the turnstile at quarterback, I think that led to some turnovers and interceptions and just things like that. When you don't have continuity, you don't have chemistry, all those things. Miles Price, you take a big slice out of his season last year due to injury. I think you look at that offensive line, which we would all agree, they would tell you the same thing. It was extremely average. Because Cole Spencer was supposed to play in it. He didn't. Dennis Wilburn was supposed to be a guard. He had to play him at center. And then you had some injury issues as well at tackle and things like that. So, and yet look what you accomplished. And they're all back, and I think you had the ability to get in a shootout and win a game, 52-49, and you had the ability to grind it down and punch people in the mouth and play field position and win games 14-10.
Dude, I think that final point may be one of the biggest things that sticks out to me about what you did last season, being successful in different scenarios, like different contexts, what the game calls for or asks for. You'll hear every coach in the country or offensive coordinator talk about being adaptable, but you don't often see it to any great success. And that was a huge thing that stuck out to me a season ago from what they were able to do, was success in different kind of circumstances as far as the ball game goes. And yeah, it also, when you were just running off some of those numbers there, and statistics obviously are for losers. The score is what we care about. And when we're talking offensive statistics, a lot of this crap gets inflated and it's just totally meaningless.
Right.
Things like points per possession, obviously your turnover margin, if you're talking about your passing game, red zone output, things like this are what you really want to dig into. But Chris, the fact that you were able to produce the 12th most prolific passing game in the country with 3 quarterbacks, I'm not sure that I knew that or would have even guessed that you were in that kind of statistical range, even if it doesn't mean a lot to you statistically. To me, that's pretty impressive that with 3 different guys, not only do you get the wins and all that you're able to do as a team, but the passing game specifically still has to be qualified, I think, is healthy in a season like that when the numbers bear out what they bear out. And you did that with 3 different guys. You mentioned the word chemistry, obviously things like synergy and continuity. I mean, this is as important as anything for a football team or for connections, wide receiver quarterback, O-line quarterback, whatever it might be, as the season goes on. And I would also say, you can apply a lot of these descriptors or lack thereof to your group of pass catchers. It wasn't like you mentioned Miles Price, but it wasn't like the other guys was, all right, every week you got a great group. So any quarterback out there, roll out Elvis Gerbach. You just throw it out there and they'll be fine. It wasn't certainly the case. Gerbach would have struggled, I think, in some of those scenarios. But it really is amazing. And there are a lot of guys, obviously, that deserve credit. But since his name is at the top for blame, I'm going to put him there for credit as well. I think you got to look a lot at what Zach Kitley did as the OC over it all to establish something like that with the inconsistency just personnel-wise. Who can play for me this week that you had throughout the year?
Yeah, you were. I think we would agree you were slow on offense. We would. Trey Cleveland, who's now at North Texas, there were some big catches he made, but they were like maybe a 40 or 50 yard catch, but it's like you're going to catch it and then that the play's over. There was no
game breaker.
Exactly. Yeah. Loic Fungi was not healthy last season. I think the tight ends there was some criticism there. I think it's just not very productive. And I think internally they would tell you they did a ton. It doesn't show up necessarily on the stat sheet. They blocked, they were targeted, there's not a lot of breakaway, and it's like, I feel like we've got this long list of like concerns and issues. And yet, I mean, it was pretty good.
Not bad.
Yeah, that's right. It's pretty good. But yeah, 27th in the – I think I maybe have gotten it backwards on the 27th and 22nd, but 27th in the country with 34 points a game and 22nd in the country with 461. And you're right. There's so many hollow yards or meaningless yards, and first downs is a stat that is somewhat meaningless. It's really about points per game, and it's about wins, and it's about how much can you, kick it through the uprights or get it into the end zone, and we need to score as much as possible. So I'm not suggesting in any way that it was perfect. I think, and the reason I wanted to have this conversation is because I think that you look at some of the things that we've talked about in the last week or so, and people projecting, the conference race, and people projecting over under win totals and all those kinds of things, that your offense is a big reason for that. Just because other than I would say offensive tackle and maybe just O-line depth, okay? And then can Cameron Valdez ably replace SaRodorick Thompson, which we've all talked about the upside. We all talked about the speed and the different look that he will give you. But he's been dinged up a bit. But if he can stay healthy – So what you just look at that side of the ball, and it's like, where are the questions? I could manufacture some, I'm sure. I think, again, they would tell you they'd love a little more proven depth on the offensive line, just in case if somebody goes down, what do? We know about Ty Buchanan at tackle, and Jacoby Jackson is the interior guy. And all that. I think you feel comfortable enough with your wideout depth that you may even be able to redshirt Brady Boyd, which is what they're talking about. I think running back, I feel better about, because insert Nehemiah Martinez is like this split duty hybrid role that he's not, which I wasn't, forecasting. And so I'm telling you, I'm not trading my 1-2 punch at quarterback in whatever order they are for anybody in the league, or with anybody in the league, I should say. And so, and again, I'm not suggesting they're going to be perfect, but we all already know Dre McCray is one of the fastest guys on your team. We already know that when Lubbock is healthy, he can really, I think, get behind the defense. So I guess it's maybe, while we're kind of, are they getting enough credit? We should kind of maybe be asking more loudly, like, where are the questions on that side of the ball, or why aren't they getting enough or more credit?
I think there are some things probably within the O-line, wide receiving core. You're really looking to see come on and for the light to click. And maybe it's just more consistently, or maybe it's just at all. Maybe it's just letting you play football. Shout out to Cole Spencer. We're hoping to get you in a uniform this year. I mean, some of these things will change for the better, we hope. But there'll be some, obviously, questions to be answered on that side. My question for you, Chris, I think I'm sitting here saying best offense since 2015, Texas Bowl year under Cliff Kingsbury. Am I right? Am I wrong? What do you think about that? This group is the best since when? But first, today's episode brought to you by Birddogs. You want to be looking good? You want to be feeling great? You're going to do it with the most versatile short pants in the world with our friends at Birddogs. Head on over to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege to place your order today and take home the most versatile shorts in the world, nay, galaxy. You think a pair of blue jeans can go 4, 5, 6, 7 days straight? If you're a man, you do. If you're a woman, that information may be shocking to you. Well, it ain't just blue jeans that are covering all occasions anymore. Since I got my pair of Birddogs in the mail, been wearing them for roughly 72 hours. Am I telling the truth, or am I fudging it a little bit to not make me seem like a weirdo? The mystery is part of the fun, but either way, the most fun is the versatility and comfort I'm finding in my Bird Dogs. So head on over to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege and enter the promo code LOCKEDONCollege with your order today. And they're going to throw in a free custom tumbler as displayed beautifully on the screen. On YouTube, you're seeing nothing if you're listening because your ears have no vision. That's not actually true. Some people can see sounds. I'm off track. Get back on track with Bird Dogs and get yourself a free custom tumbler with every order when you use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege at birddogs.com/lockedoncollege. The most versatile, great feeling, great looking shorts in the world from our friends at Bird Dogs. I think I'm sitting here saying best offense since 2015, Texas Bowl year under Cliff Kingsbury. Am I right? Am I wrong? What do you think about that? This group is the best since when?
Yeah, that's a great point. And we've kind of buried the lead here, and I know his mom is probably watching, and so I don't want to, besmirch their last name by saying it incorrectly. So Rusty Stats.
That's right.
I said it right, Mom.
Shout out to the Stats family.
He could theoretically be the most important addition to your entire team. We talked about, I remember talking to you back in, I don't know, what was it, December or January, kind of after the season had come to an end. And we talked about like most important or most valuable guys. And I still will maintain that all of last year, Dennis Wilburn was that guy for that offense. He was the glue up front. He kind of came out of nowhere and really carried the water for that group. So if we say that offensive line was very average, if not for him, it's failing. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not below average. It's probably failing. That's how much I thought about what he did, the glue that able to keep it together and all those things. And for Rusty to come in and them go, okay, we're good here. We're going to get to move you now. I just think tells you a lot. But I think Zach Kitley will be the first one to tell you that Stats is somebody that will change the entire dynamic of the offense because how fast he plays and how, just how mature he is. He's a total football junkie. And, again, I think he's upgraded everybody else's play around him on that, including Dennis, which says a lot. And I think there's an extra gear there as far as, leadership, but especially as far as the tempo aspect. I just think Rusty, and he already knew this offense. So I didn't want to, because, I mean, you talk to Joey McGuire, and he will tell you the biggest difference on our entire team from last year is our offensive line. And so much of that has to do with Stats. And I think Cole Spencer and then moving Wilburn, and there's some other things too, but I think Stats is a huge portion of kind of the whole machine. And I just think offensive linemen, individually, they get buried a bit, but I'm just telling you the way that they feel about it. And I've got no reason to disagree or to doubt it. But I think that this group, man, in a way could surprise a lot of people. How about that? This group could surprise a lot of people because they're kind of being talked about, just kind of ho-hum. And I don't guess I understand why.
Yeah, well, more than likely, because of the fact that there wasn't, I think you've mentioned this on prior shows, there wasn't somebody easily to be attached to, like at the quarterback position or whatever last year, if you're national media or Big 12 media otherwise. And so would be considering that a huge question for any team that seemingly didn't know who their quarterback was going to be or felt like they might have some choices to make still as you got into the year. I would view that from afar as not the best situation to be in. So I don't know if up close even that makes you feel all that much better, but I think I know that Tyler Shuck is going to be the quarterback. And so confident in what he's able to do. And that gives me some optimism, but I can understand kind of from afar, I guess, why there's some turning up of the eyebrow, trying to figure out what they got going on over there, because I'm still very much a believer, Chris, in the fact that you want one quarterback running the show. And if we're talking about any 1-2 punch or multiple quarterback usage, it should only be out of necessity or something just completely off the radar as far as a play here or there, some type of package. But I mean, I want, and I don't think I'm alone or in a minority. I want Tyler Shuck or whoever that guy is that's chosen game one to be healthy enough to have the chance to play in every other game as well. What a novel thought, right? That's just the opposite of the experience we got from a season ago.
Yeah, and I get it, and that's fair. I just, but as it relates to like the Big 12 conference, I think everybody could look at everybody's quarterback situation last year and go, health was an issue, whether it was a major or a minor issue. It factored into everybody's situation for the most part, or ineffectiveness in West Virginia's case when they were playing two guys because they just couldn't get married to one or the other. But yeah, I mean, and that's a fair point. I just, but again, the output was the output, and I think it's fascinating to kind of look back on it and go, look, I mean, you had a long list of problems. We've spent 18 to 20 minutes talking about kind of the maybe your issues and what you weren't very good at, and yet I think you look at the 8 wins and you look at your ability to kind of morph into get in a shootout, or let's play old school Baltimore Raven type football. Like what you pick your style, we'll beat you at whatever kind of fight you want to get into, and there's just not many teams that can do that. And I think it's pretty fascinating because that Baltimore Raven type environment in 0-degree temperature in Ames, Iowa, I'd like to forget very soon. I don't know if I'll forget it anytime soon. Drinking chicken broth on the sideline, not something that I ever had on my bucket list, I can tell you that. But that was one of the most satisfying wins because of how you did it, and you kind of you did the Iowa State what Iowa State typically had done to you felt like the last decade, and so. But that back to your point about agreeing with my point, I guess, is just because when you were really good in 2019 in men's basketball, that was always fascinating to me, is that you could play the half-court game as well as anybody in the country. If you wanted to get it into let's get up and down the floor like Kansas would want to, or whoever those years, like we'll run with you and we'll be better at that than you are too, And I thought that's really when you're cooking with gas, man, is when you've got a team that can beat you in a variety of different ways. There's not just this certain recipe that we must follow, and if we forget the salt, then the cake sucks and it's over. So there's a variety of different ways that you can win games, and I think that really is a sign of a really good team. And all those ingredients, including the salt, are back this year.
I don't know how to bake a cake. You put salt in a cake? That sounded a little abnormal.
I think sometimes just a little pinch.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
And we missed one huge looming question about the team at large, not just the offense, but the big picture. What the hell are we going with chicken broth for? This is beef country, boys. Beef broth is out there. These chicken boys have made enough money. Support the beef industry, coach. Let's go. Beef broth in 2023 is the answer. Okay, coming up next, we're going to wrap up this week, maybe with clarity. Who can we believe whenever it comes to realignment? Next on Locked On Texas Tech. Glad to have you along for the ride on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network. However you're making the show a part of your day, we appreciate it. Thanks for making us your first listen every day on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. With Chris Level, I'm KC Cowan. One more again for the week before we are out of here and on into the weekend. Chris, there's been plenty of realignment conversation to be had here this week. We had some of it here on Locked On Texas Tech in days gone by, so check up on those episodes if you might have missed anything. But you asked something, I think, the other day, or you mentioned something that I thought was kind of important, at least historically, for a reference point. When some of these moves have happened, like actually happened, there's been transitions from one conference to the next, it seemingly comes out of nowhere. It's not following like months and months and months of reporting, or reporting on infighting that's actually outfighting and not behind closed doors among conference leadership or things like that. It's out of nowhere. You're like Chris Tucker surrounded by triads, just wondering which one of y'all kicked me. This has been the way so far, and the most prominent examples recently were absolutely that way. Texas OU bailing, USC, UCLA bailing. Came out of left field, I think, for a lot of folks, certainly the way I felt about it. So who can we actually believe among what we've heard, so prominently? And I think a good question that you brought up also is just the impact of the public back and forth, which the ACC is kind of getting their turn, I guess, in the public right now, going back and forth. And does that help or hurt any cause also? It's really difficult to determine what's real, I guess. But what we know is sometimes these biggest moves just come out of the dark, it seems like, with not a whole lot of warning, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, and I think this latest 60 to 90 days that we've kind of gone through is been extremely public, extremely. I mean, because now you have like fans of certain leagues going after each other on social media and arguing about stuff that was reported and all that. I mean, when in all reality, when the big dominoes have fallen, it's like a where was I moment. Like whenever you see, the Houston Chronicle and Brett Zwarneman report Oklahoma and Texas are coming to the SEC, and it's an A&M writer, and you're like, excuse me? Like that the world stops. Last summer, USC, UCLA, Big Ten. Not only was it speculated on, it's like, here's what's happening. Like, this is done. And it's like, next thing you know, we'd like to welcome USC and UCLA to the party. And you're like, what? We didn't even get to talk about any of this. Like, don't forget about us. The need to like.
There was a party.
Yeah, like hash it out, man. I mean, like, we could have spent weeks on the pros and cons and like, the possibilities and all these things. But no, it just happened. Boom. And so the point is that while there is a lot of information that is out there, some of which we believe, and I think you believe the way the wind's blowing on some subject compared to others. Ultimately, there's very few people that really know when a school is going to drop a bomb or a league is going to drop a bomb, and like there's going to be a domino falling. That at least in the past. And I think that's what's been tricky is that this has been so public, and part of that is Brett Yormark, and he because we haven't had really commissioners operate this way before. He's been very outspoken, and I do tend to, and he's earned this. I tend to believe when he says, "I want to expand, I want to get into this other time zone, I want to do this," and it leads to expansion. I believe that there's a lot of teeth to those kinds of comments because, hey, the dude told me you were getting a media rights deal done sooner than later. Guess what? He said a lot of things, and typically it's happened, and at least to this point. And so I don't think he just throws around commentary willy-nilly. So but not to suggest there's not truths out there between Ross Dellinger and Max Olson, and who I know Max, he does a great job, Nicole Auerbach, John Wilner, and the Kazano on the left coast and all that. There's probably good truths and nuggets and tidbits in there that are absolutely accurate. I just know, though, as far as meaningful, dominoes falling, typically those just get dropped in your lap and you weren't expecting it. There is no, hey, there's a rumor about a meeting here in the coming days. I mean, typically it's just such a small group that it's like a very coordinated effort, and bam, because now everybody's getting a chance to fight and argue and fight back and plan and all that, when typically before it was, this is our motivation. We're not changing our mind. We don't want anybody to know about it. And then when the time comes, we'll announce it, and there's no turning back. And we just haven't seen that next round yet, I guess.
And we are definitely, as the Big 12, the living embodiment of that James Franco meme, I think from the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. I thought I forgot that name, but it just came to me from the ether. I'm not sure if that's exactly right, but he's on the gallows and looking at the guy next to him and says, first time, because we're hearing so many things about the Pac-12 or the ACC that are just straight out of the talking points from some Big 12 history over the last decade, which is like, no, we're going to consolidate. We're strong as 10, and we're moving forward as this. Oh no, we'll just crumble this league and we'll make a new one and we'll consolidate power in that way. There are these stages of grief that so many are having to go through, and unfortunately, too many are still locked up, I guess, in the denial phase. But eventually reality will set in and you'll make the best of whatever that reality is. I'm still very optimistic about what that will mean for, say, the Big 12, but specifically Texas Tech, because I don't care about any of the rest of y'all in the Big 12 either. Whatever's best for Texas Tech, hopefully will be the result. But, yeah, a whole lot more to come, Chris. Before we're out of here, what do you think, though, about the public back and forth? Like the ACC, I guess, has maybe this week been the most prominent. Publicly, like ADs, and again, some of this is anonymous source reporting, some on the record. But what do you think about that public aspect? Does that hasten possibly the demise?
I do. I think if you're trying to get business done, I think of how public so much of this has been. I think it makes it harder on you. If you're really trying to get something done, get a school added, I'm trying to leave a league, whatever. I just think there's a spotlight on this stuff, and school presidents and athletic directors are being asked about this in variety of leagues. League meetings are going on, in the coming days, and then have gone on the last week, and it's just, again, when big business anyways has gotten done in the past, it's been shrouded in secrecy. And I just think it's very difficult to try to do that now because everybody's antenna is way up. But yeah. prime example, the flavor of the month, I don't know, 6 weeks, 2 months ago, you tell me, was Gonzaga. We were seeing their name mentioned prominently, various articles. It wasn't just one time. It was over this period of time. It was introduced and then it was reintroduced, and it was, hey, we're going to meet with them, or officials between the Big 12 and Gonzaga have met at in Dallas, and there was all kinds of this going on, right? I mean, so it had a fairly lengthy shelf life when college basketball season was going on.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen a word about Gonzaga since. Not one time have I seen their name listed in anything. And so, which makes me want to think maybe they're out, or maybe that's what you're about to get dropped in your lap, because they're totally out of sight right now. Because what has replaced them in the last 3 or 4 days that has seemingly also come out of nowhere is UConn. Now it's being talked about in a variety of different writers and articles, and even the ADs are being asked about it up in UConn, and people are now arguing like, well, they may turn it down. They kind of got out of the league that they were in and got back into the Big East because their fans didn't like it. They're not worried about money. I mean, there's all this UConn conversation going on. They've won 5 national championships in basketball. It's like just came out of nowhere, and yet Gonzaga is just like, hey, are they still here? Are they still an option? What's going on? No mention. Even in Ross Dellinger's article, Memphis, SMU, San Diego State, UNLV, UConn. Where's Gonzaga? I mean, did they just fold up and move to Canada? I mean, what? I mean, why are we not? You know what I'm saying? So I just think it's kind of fascinating the way that there's some ebb and flow to the news cycle, and I don't know. It has been very public, but it's kind of fascinating. I just be careful about everything that you believe out there, even though people want to believe it. That's the tricky part.
You're going with it sounds like sometimes it's quiet, too quiet kind of approach. Why am I not hearing anything? Who's about to come at me from which way,
That's
emerging
right.
from the shadows? And you're exactly right. The biggest business, the biggest, most earth-shattering, ground-shaking deals emerge out of nowhere, just like nobody had any idea you and I were about to hit the scenes with this show back on August.
It's like a Randy Orton RKO.
I don't know what that means, but that sounds exciting. That sounds exciting. Just like the next round of Locked On Texas Tech will be. So we hope you'll be back here on the other side of the weekend. Hope you have a great one of those wherever you may be. Thanks for hanging with us throughout the week, and looking forward to doing it again on the other side. Chris, enjoyed it as always, man. Thanks for the time.
The weekend is here. Enjoy, people.
Fly, fly. Fly,
That's right.
fly.
That's right. Do your thing and put on your bird dogs. Yeah,
Right.
you'll thank us later.
For Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Thanks again for joining us and making us your first listen every day on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. We'll see you for the next edition of Locked On Texas Tech.